like I also get a bunch of comments, obviously having made like the videos on how I learned English and so on. People saying, I think for the vast majority, it's like, yeah, you speak very well and you sound like a native speaker. But often it's like you get the comments saying, no, I don't know, like I'm American and he definitely doesn't sound native. Or so I'm not really sure what
Mm.
to believe anymore. And I'm not really sure that this really matters, anyways.
No.
It's just more of a, I guess it's kind of nice when you talk and like people think that you're from somewhere else. It's kind of an ego thing, I suppose.
Yeah. It's also
Yeah.
for me because that's always the question that comes up. People say like, "Well, why do you need to sound native? Like, what's the?" It's not about my ego or anything else. And I'm not saying like, "Oh, you're wrong, Lewis." It's not like I know that's obviously what people think it is. They're like, "Oh, you just want to be like you just want to be the ultimate language learner and stuff." It's not that. It's that I have a sharp ear. I studied music for 5 years. That's pretty much what we do. We listen for things. And so I have a very sharp ear. And I don't like when I say something. Like even before, when I wasn't even speaking Swedish, but I used the word påpeka. And I don't like that long E sound from me in Swedish. I always feel like it's not quite right. I can get it perfect if I'm just doing that, but when I'm actually saying something, a whole sentence, I'll have that E sound wrong. And it sort of bothers me just because I can hear it. It's like, it's sort of, I guess I've only just come up with this now, so it might not be the best analogy, but like, it's sort of like knowing that something is wrong with your car as you're driving it, if it doesn't actually make any difference to the driving experience. It's just this kind of little itch in your brain of like, you say something and you're like, that didn't sound quite right. And,
Yeah.
and I kind of go, well, if that's what I think of it, then it must sound wrong to Swedish speakers, to natives. That's why I work on it because I want it to be right for my own sake.
Yeah, yeah. And so how much emphasis do you put on just I guess pronunciation, but also accent reduction, I suppose? I think you mentioned on, I don't remember if it was a video or another podcast, where you said that for, I think it was for Swedish, you got on italki and hired a teacher and actually spent a lot of time talking with teachers and so on. Is accent reduction and pronunciation a big part of the lessons?
No, only because I hate it. As in, I just I actually prefer it with a teacher. It's sort of okay with a teacher, but the stuff that you can do on your own, like listening back to yourself and trying to perfect things. Like I've spoken in videos about this before. Like there are things that you can do that are very effective per minute. Like you can do 5 minutes of this trying to perfect one sentence. So listen to a native speaker say it, and a native speaker from a situation in which they sound native. So not a language learning sentence where they're like saying exactly what they're supposed to say, but something that something from a TV series or even
Yeah.
preferably from a recording that where the person was speaking without a script, and just trying to perfect that. 5 minutes will feel like an hour because it's hard, it's sweat inducing, and it's uncomfortable, but it does make a big difference. So the good news is that you don't have to do very much of it. The bad news is, for me at least, that I don't even like doing that much of it. Um, and in the lessons, I just generally chat. But lately, I have had a few lessons again recently after a long time off having any lessons, and we can be a bit more focused in what we work on. But it's more generally phrases and things because that's the stuff that's going to make the most difference. Is what kind of phrases do you have at your disposal? Like it's like, okay, I would understand those if I heard them in a book or a series, but I'm might not be ready to use them. So working on that kind of stuff can be good for your general conversation ability. But no, I would say my accent has improved purely by that that thing that I just mentioned of I can hear the difference. So the more time I spend just speaking Swedish and listening to Swedish, the just very slowly that gap narrows between what I can hear and what I'm able to replicate. And so I remember thinking my Swedish accent was good in 2020, um, and now I listen and think, how did I ever think that was good? Um, but it's like it's just because that gap has just slowly narrowed. It's not
Yeah.
that, yeah.
And I feel like just yeah, talking about accents is just as you said, like why would someone really want to speak without an accent? Like there's a difference between having bad pronunciation and having an accented pronunciation, where I feel like having good
Mm.
pronunciation is really important for, just so people understand you, but then like typically for me being a French speaker, I talk with people like, for example, Americans, and they're like, "Oh, really? You're a French speaker? It's kind of weird." Because it's even like, when I speak English to them, it's not really impressive because
Hmm.
like there's almost no accent. So they're like, "Oh, okay, I don't know,
Yep.
that's weird."
Yep.
But if I spoke pretty well, like same, the same sentences, but with some like strong French accent or whatever like
Hmm.
that, it's almost like for them a little bit more exotic.
Yep.
So there's, I suppose, all of this is like ego stuff, but something that people may want to consider.
Yep.
In yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but
I do think that native speakers often think that you sound better when you have a little bit or even quite a strong French accent or a strong accent of any kind. What I'm kind of scared of myself, thing I'm scared of myself in Swedish is that you don't get Australians who sound close to being Swedish. So
okay,
I think I feel like there must be an uncanny valley if people are familiar with that term of like things that you almost sound right, but then occasionally you say something that just sounds really weird. It just sounds like off in this. Whereas when I, yeah, and that happens with the people I know who speak English to a very very high level, and it doesn't bother me. But occasionally they say something that I'm like, oh, that was weird, and I'm sort of worried about that because I don't know that would be a blind spot for me in Swedish. It's like I don't know where that's
okay,
going to come
okay.
up. Um, and I would, if I could click my fingers and sound perfect, I probably would do that just because then I just don't have to worry about it.